And so the chapter moves on to the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Now, this is one of the few stories told in all four Gospels, and it doesn't tell us much new except that it was palm branches that the people cut down and waved and laid before Jesus. Throughout ancient history, palm branches were a symbol of victory. God had ordained in advance that 6 days before his death, Jesus should be proclaimed as a victorious king. Now, those people cutting down the palm branches didn't realize they were fulfilling a calling. We know that because Jesus said, if they don't do it, the very stones will do it. I don't want some old rocks fulfilling my calling, do you? And there in the middle of it all was a donkey, one of the few donkeys in history with a calling. His calling was to fulfill a 400-year-old prophecy. And there was a small miracle involved here. He'd never been ridden before, and yet he didn't flinch, he didn't balk, he didn't exercise that donkey's ancient crooked will. He just placidly did what he was called to do. And he's forever remembered as the one who bore the King of Glory into the gates. And so we move on to Jerusalem a couple of days later, when some Greeks come to Philip and say, "Sir, we would see Jesus." I was once preaching as a visiting preacher in a church, and as I got up into the pulpit, I saw a plaque on the pulpit that said, "Sir, we would see Jesus." That makes a difference to how you preach. But these Greeks had a calling because their arrival was the sign to Jesus that the hour had come. Now, they didn't know they were exercising a calling, but if we simply live our lives as well as we can, seeking Jesus, we will fulfill our calling. Philip takes him to Andrew, and Andrew exercises the calling he always does, bringing people to Jesus. But lastly, we come to the greatest calling of all, that of Jesus himself. Jesus knew not only what his calling would be, he knew when it would be. Now, it's a great blessing in our lives that we don't know the hour of our death. Otherwise, it would preoccupy us far too much. It's very hard to know the hour of your death. There's a great little poem called The Clock, describing a man in his cell at night, due to be executed at 8 the next morning. And he listens to the clock in the tower, carelessly tossing the hours out over the town as if they were nothing. And yet for him, every one was an hour less to live. It's very hard to know the hour of your death. Yet Jesus did. When those Greeks arrive, he says, "Now my time has come." 3 times before he has said, "My hour has not yet come." He knew the hour. But because he was so clear of his calling, he bore it with dignity and courage. There's always a cost in fulfilling our calling. With Mary, it was the cost of a whole year's wages. With the donkey, it was the cost of bearing a burden for Jesus and not complaining. For Jesus, it was death. In verse 25, Jesus says, "Whoever gains his life in this world will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." In 1955, 5 young American men sensed the calling to try and reach the Auca Indian tribe for Jesus, a very dangerous tribe living deep in the Amazon forest. And so they went. They were men in their prime with families, but they went. And they paid the price with their lives. But written in the journal of one of them, Jim Elliot, were these words: "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. No fool to give what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose."